All right, all right. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all having a wonderful Thursday. I'd just like to welcome you all here. Before we get started on the event, while we're just waiting for some people to tune in, I would just like to ask an icebreaker question to Riley and also to the audience. So, what is everyone's favorite karaoke or go-to karaoke song? I'd love to see. You can just jot down your notes in the chat.
Hi, everyone. I can kick it off. My go-to karaoke song, I always go with Piano Man. Billy Joel fans out there, anyone. I'm a big Billy Joel fan. My dad plays harmonica. So if I'm lucky enough to go to karaoke with my father, he busts out the harmonica. I'm singing Piano Man, and it is a grand old time. That's
Oh my
my
God.
go-to.
Maya also loves Piano Man. We have Toby with Don't Stop Believing. Oh, Tequila. That is a classic.
It's not
Dancing Queen,
one.
another classic. So the one that I recently did was such a throwback to the 90s, Butterfly by Crazy Town. I didn't realize how hard it was to rap that.
Oh my gosh, I cannot even imagine.
So we also have Angels, Mamma Mia, Bohemian Rhapsody also
Yes.
recently did that. Yep, Jolene, classic. Also,
Jolene,
yes,
love
a
it.
classic. So while we're getting the engagement going, I would also really like to know where is everyone tuning in from. So and also what you're most excited to hear about in today's webinar.
For those who don't know, I'm tuning in from Boston over here in the East Coast of the US. I love to travel though, so I love the global representation. Look at all this. Oh my
Oh
goodness.
wow. We have people from all over the world.
I love
Chile,
it. Boston, go
Charlottesville,
Boston. Love it.
Switzerland, Boston,
Amsterdam.
yes, Adam, Bulgaria. Okay, we have my living room. Nice. Singapore. Awesome. Awesome.
Singapore. Love Singapore.
This is great. So, as we're getting started, everyone, I'm just gonna, get started on the housekeeping. So, how everything works. So, I see that you've all already figured out how the chat option works, which is great. If you look down at your screen, you'll see the chat and you'll also see a questions tab. So, for everyone who wants to ask a question, I would really recommend you to put it in the questions tab so that we can keep track of it. In the chat tab, it sometimes gets lost and we would like to answer as many questions as possible. So make sure to drop it in the questions tab. And we also have polls going on. So Riley has created some poll questions for today, and we'd really like to get your feedback on, some of our employer branding questions that we have for you to kind of see where the audience is at. So make sure to check out our polls. We will vocalize it when the polls are going out. And so some housekeeping for today. Yes. And so, as you all know, we're doing employer branding. So how to amplify your employees' voices to promote your employer brand. So this is a really important topic, especially in today's market where things are offline and online. People are going into the office, some people are remote, and now remote teams are really growing. So it's really important to engage with your teams all over the world, whether you're going into the office as well as when you're engaging with them online. So today we're going to really dive into how Riley does it at her team at Datadog. Datadog is expanding at a rapid pace, so she has some really good tips and tactics on how to do this. And so for some of you that are not familiar with Wonderkind, Wonderkind is a talent attraction technology. Our technology supports our partners in creating authentic brand awareness content for awareness ad campaigns, including job ads. We target specific audiences, such as passive and active candidates, based on their interests and intent so that we can escape bias. With our tool, you can automate, manage, track, and optimize your ads in just minutes. And before we get started, for some of you who don't know me, I am the manager at Wonderkind. I'm also your host for today. And without further ado, bringing it into our star, Riley Stefano. So she is the global leader of recruitment marketing and employer branding at Datadog. And we'll already get into our first question. So Riley, tell us about what you do at Datadog.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Daniela. I love the global representation. I feel like that's one of my favorite parts of my job and something we'll definitely talk about so much today is just really that global storytelling of your employees. But a little bit about me. I fell into this world of employer brand and recruitment marketing a little, probably like so many of us did in this space, probably about 6 years ago now, have really been building a career around just that amplification of the amazing people who work for our workplaces, right? And so with that at Datadog, I joined about 2 years ago, actually the day the pandemic happened. So kind of crazy story, joined the first week and was in the office for 2 days and then have been working remotely ever since. So a little bit of a wild ride there, but it's been a fantastic journey. I was the first person kind of on the ground to be building out recruitment marketing as a dedicated function within Datadog, something our recruiting teams very heavily invested in and we're actively working on to, run the full gamut of all of their recruiting strategies, sourcing, RPIs, everything on top of this marketing strategy. So being team member number one was definitely an interesting role, kind of learning the ins and outs of the company, which Datadog is a cloud monitoring and software security platform, really helping just businesses break down silos between development, security, and operations teams. And so having such a technical product, really my initiative and my first kind of goal when building up this recruitment marketing strategy at Datadog was, how do we tell a story that's really going to attract candidates who don't have as much of that technical background? So I think of the sales people, the marketing people, the G&A people. That side of the business world is a little bit more where I really action on building up content to really get and entice and attract those candidates to come in and learn more about the amazing workplaces, people, culture, product, all the things that make Datadog special and unique. So that's a little bit about me. I'm excited to be having this conversation with you all and talk to you a little bit about ways that as a team of one, now a team of two, I've actually recently become a first-time people manager. So building out this recruitment marketing org and structure within Datadog and just all the ways that we've kind of had to be scrappy with no budget and just figure out how to build this great recruitment marketing strategy from the ground up.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's talk about so you were the first recruitment marketing specialist there. So how did you go in and start building a brand that your employees are really proud to promote? And how did you build this from the ground up?
Yeah, I took a lot of it from, I think what I had previously come from a company called HubSpot. Anyone on the East Coast, Boston area has probably heard of HubSpot. It's a company that is really well known for their company culture. And so when I came from there, that was something that they were so proud to promote and shout from the rooftops, was this culture that they were building from their people. And it was something I recognized right off the bat that employees were really proud to promote, was this phenomenal company culture. And with that, I wanted to make sure that the employee voice was something that I always was going to weave into the content that I was creating, because at the end of the day, it's that authenticity, that transparency, and even the humility that drives that people first culture that so many candidates are passionate to hear about. There's so many statistics out there that really candidates don't care about hearing from us, from the recruiters, from the company. They want to hear from the people whose shoes they're going to be in. And so when you're building or thinking about building this brand that employees are proud of, they want to hear about what are the phenomenal work that their colleagues are doing. What are they doing that's supporting your growth, your product, your culture, your people, whatever it is that's really making your entire company grow, because really it is based on the success. The success is based on the people who you are supporting. And so I think that that's kind of how I lead and think about the strategy that I'm implementing, especially in today's digital world where transparency has never been more important, right? So we're trying to build this trust with candidates in this unprecedented market, this hottest job market I think any of us have ever experienced. And by telling their stories and building this brand that they're proud to share, the stories of their friends, of their colleagues, of themselves, building up their own personal brand is a great way for us to build our employer brand, which we'll definitely talk more about. But it's just giving them the tools and the resources to amplify that brand from the rooftops and make sure that, there's a lot of stuff internally that your teams can work on from a culture perspective to make sure that they're proud to work at this company, in this workplace. And when you have really the voice component, that amplification, again, you're really just giving them the power and the tools to share the stories and successes of all those around them and the people who make your company such a great place to work. Danielle, actually, I'm so curious for our first poll.
Ooh, of course, yeah.
One of the polls and one of the things I would love to hear from you all, it's the where and if you are or where are you currently promoting your employee stories within your own companies? So Danielle's going to drop that poll. Some of the things, and we'll talk into this a little bit, but like places such as career pages, social media channels, thought leadership articles, other avenues. I mean, I definitely want this to be a knowledge share opportunity too for us all to, chat through what are the different ways that you're kind of telling those stories now, or if not, share with others. That way we can kind of help all be promoting these stories with one another.
Yeah, so everyone, we just dropped a poll question in the polls option. So if you go down onto the right side of your screen, you'll see the poll. So we're curious to see, yeah, what everyone, where you're promoting your employee stories. And if there is something that has not been mentioned, drop it in the chat because we'd really like to see. All right. So Riley, are you also able to see the published poll? Because I can also go through the answers with you.
And I'm so curious. Okay, so it looks like Danielle, I can read them off if that makes it
Great.
easiest.
Yeah, go for it.
So
Yeah.
it looks like so many others, which I love, social media is the resounding winner, 62%. A lot of people are using social media. It's an avenue that we actively use at Datadog as a way to really amplify these voices, stories. Some secret tools and tricks, Canva. If anyone's ever used Canva to create some really fun, beautiful graphics, we partner with our in-house design team. It's a great way to use a free resource to just kind of be telling those employee stories, getting quotes, testimonials from your people, things like that. Other ones that were top of the list, not yet having the employee amplification strategy. Well, that's why we're here today. I'm so glad you're here to learn a little bit more about it. But yeah, so social media, great way to do it. Careers page testimonials. That's one of the first places your employees are going to go to learn more about your job, right? So the more that you can share these stories of your people on your own careers page is a great avenue to do that also.
So I already have a question for those that don't have an employee amplification strategy. What kind of advice would you give them on where to start? What channel would you start? Would you start with social media, as you mentioned, career pages, and and you also mentioned you have Canva. So maybe you can dive into a little bit of the templates that you would give your employees to use.
100%. Yeah. From an employee amplification strategy, to your point exactly, Danielle, I think it's empowering your employees to be sharing some of this content. I mean, like we just talked about, you can absolutely be adding these testimonials to your careers page, to your own social media channels, whether that be Instagram and LinkedIn are the two that we rely on the most. Twitter's another big one, I think, from a candidate perspective, that a lot of candidate facing content is utilized and promoted on. But I would say really it's also empowering your employees. So one of the things I love to do is create easy, quick graphics within Canva. So if you haven't explored Canva yet, free drag, droppy, copy, paste design tool. It's so easy to use. And really, you can put your own branding behind it. So if you do have an in-house design team, as we do, we work with our design team to create like simple, quick templates that my team can then go in and action on, or you can be creating your own. And it's just an easy way. I use Google Forms as a way to just ask employees, what attracted you to Datadog? What is it that you love about our culture? Can you tell us a little bit about a day in your life? And so we have these employees, we call it an employee spotlight form. And essentially, we send out this Google form to people that we've recognized have been really just crushing it in their role, doing a fantastic job. We really want to amplify their voices and stories. And we give them this form for them to fill out. We take those responses and put that in this Canva graphic, essentially. And then we take that graphic and we add a little bit of what I call quick copy. So one of the things that I really try and do in helping employees to amplify our brand through their own personal brands is making it as easy as possible. We all recognize our employees have a million things going on in their day-to-day, right? This is our day-to-day, what we're thinking about constantly, but they have so many other things on their plate. So giving them the tools and resources to make this employee amplification strategy as easy as possible is how you're going to see the most success out of it. So quick copy, one or two easy sentences that you draft as something that they can use to post with that graphic. So whether it's a graphic of, again, a testimonial from your employee, a quote from that employee spotlight graphic, something like that, I just add a quick copy post as well as a link to our career site just to drive some of that click through rate, that action, give them a little bit of a CTA. And it's to share it right in. We use Slack as an internal communications tool. Set up a Slack channel. So, and I'm jumping way ahead of all of Daniella's questions, but it's just a great, easy way to share it. So when you're thinking of really starting from zero budget, ground zero, you want to think about your employee amplification strategy as this ripple effect, right? We are one person, and you're probably part of companies anywhere from 2 people, 3 people, 5 people to my company has now grown to 3,000 people in the time I've been there. Maybe you're coming in from a company even bigger than that. The more you can lean on your own employees to be building this employee amplification, sharing that strategy, you're going to create this ripple domino effect within their LinkedIn networks or whatever network they're sharing this from, of people that you might not be reaching within your own network, or your company might not yet be reaching because they're not part of that network. And that's where a lot of these great referrals also come in from. So having a great referral program to kind of back up some of this employee amplification is another great way to just ensure that your network, your employees' network are sharing out this content, using those free resources, the employee spotlight graphics, things like that, and just getting more and more people to recognize your brand when you're kind of starting at that ground level place.
I love the employee spotlight form. I think that's amazing because you're giving your employees the choice on whether they want to be promoted. And you
Yeah.
also mentioned that you share the spotlight form with kind of killer employees that have been doing really great or advocates. How do you automate this process? So does this mean that you have to engage with their managers? Like how do you make this frictionless, right? Because you may yeah.
Exactly. Yep, 100%. So we oftentimes get recommendations or nominations. We actually have a nomination form. That's kind of like our first touch point. It's
Mm.
actually a brand new process. So it was something that we wanted to think more, I think, proactively about, in that, ensuring that the candidates, or I'm sorry, the employees that we're promoting really, we want this to be something that's like something that is a proud moment for them, or something that, we're really rewarding them with, like, hey, we want to shout your story from the rooftop. You have been doing phenomenal in your role here at Datadog, at XYZ company, wherever you're at. And to do that, exactly that, Daniela, we talk to their hiring managers or to our recruiters who have kept a really close, relationship with some of the hires that they've made. And we also we have internal people business partners. So our people business partners are kind of our gatekeepers and final okayers. So once those nominations are sent through this quick form from the hiring manager or from the recruiter, we do a quick gut check with the people business partner to say, hey, is this someone that, we are welcome to feature on an external spotlight, employee testimonial, whatever it is, wherever we're putting it, video, could be anything. They give that thumbs up, or like, hey, they're a little bit newer to, the company. Maybe we spotlight someone else and let them get a little bit more ramped up in their role. Usually that's the case if we ever do get a no or a pushback, something that we think about. But usually that's kind of the process, is we get that nomination through that Google form, just check in with that PVP, because usually the nomination's coming from the hiring manager or from the recruiter itself. Sometimes they're prospected right by us if it's someone that I work closely with and I'm like, this is such a cool story to tell. A lot of those career transition stories are great ones to capitalize on. So really that, like, career shakers, anyone who's had internal mobility within your company, that career progression development, other great stories to definitely capitalize on, to show that upward momentum and how other people, again, can see themselves in those shoes or progressing with your company in a similar way.
Yeah, and especially when you're promoting these career shakers and this internal mobility, you're showcasing that anyone in their position can expand to that as well. So not only are you promoting the employee that has had this amazing opportunity, but everyone else at your company that this is possible. And we're there to help showcase the awesome stuff that you're doing. So we
100%.
got a really interesting question from Miriam that I'm already gonna ask. And yes, we had a slide deck prepared, but we are just having a conversation because it was just to guide us. But the way that we're going, this is so much fun. And I think it's really interesting to already be talking about this. So Miriam asked a question: how do you scale that process from over 5,000 employees? Well, while making sure that you act as one voice, protecting your brand identity.
Absolutely. It's such a great question. And something that, candidly, I think we're still figuring out right now at Datadog. And one of the ways that we're working to figuring out is partnering really closely with our marketing team. So one of the things I didn't talk about in the beginning was just kind of like how recruitment marketing at Datadog is set up. And I know that this is such a hot topic, hot conversation, because I think it's so different and so drastically vast across all companies. So at Datadog, recruitment marketing employer brand, my team sits within recruiting. And so other companies, actually even within HubSpot, our team sat within HR. I've talked to other people and other professionals who actually sit within the marketing world. And so I think that if you do sit like me within the recruiting space, especially as you're thinking about that brand, that voice, that identity that you're trying to scale with the company as it scales, having a really just close connection, I would say, with your marketing team is essential. So having those, I think, champions within marketing who you can, if you're hesitant about a piece of content or about an employee spotlight or about, you're doing a huge careers page revamp as we're in the midst of doing right now, it's something that, a lot of eyes should be on. It's, a big deal to be putting out, especially a piece of content of that size and scale. So I think that finding your champions, finding those liaisons within your marketing department is the perfect opportunity to be like, hey, I need to gut to check this with you. Here is, this piece of content. I want to make sure it's on brand, has that voice or tone, but also hopefully, as your company is scaling, that marketing team is defining that brand voice, and somewhere, whether it's an internal wiki or something like that, that you can easily come back to and reference. Or maybe it's something that you set up and establish with that marketing team of like, hey, I would love a guideline of just like, what is this, XYZ's company brand voice that I can be following to make sure that as I'm producing this content, if you're sitting within the recruiting team or HR team, that you're making sure that that brand still stays consistent, especially as you get more and more in that limelight as your company continues to grow and scale at that rate.
Yeah, and I think especially as companies continue to grow, some of them have the growing pains. So consistently keeping all of these different departments, in check with each other and having the communication lines open and also giving them the guidelines that they need in advance is really important, because they already will have these resources so that they don't need to continuously go back and forth, right? So it helps streamline the process. So I'm really excited about this question because I'm really curious. So tell us a little bit about a success story that you've had already at Datadog.
One of my favorites was actually this past summer. So one of the things that we do often, or that the US does, they have this National Internship Award program through Way Up. It's a national intern award, and it's something that we capitalize on our intern stories, because a lot of times our interns are hired to become full-time employees. So we love to really capitalize on that campus audience. So what we did with National Intern Day this year, it's a whole day that they promote as part of the award, the week, the program. And what we really wanted to do was tell those stories of our interns, right? And so what we decided to do to make it a little bit of fun, and because Gen Zers are so creative, we actually did Instagram takeovers. But we did them a little bit different than how I've done them in the past. So in the past, there's a few different ways to do these Instagram takeovers. But what I love about them is that it really gives the employee the reins to be sharing a day in their life. But how much reins do we give our employees, right? To be, have that full access into social media channels, into, the back end workings, and telling that story, and, content that maybe we don't want them to share or do want them to share. So what we did, same thing using a Google form, we actually had them pre-submit kind of like a, 3 or 4 stories or posts with the copy that they want to post, so that we could then schedule out that content. We use Hootsuite as a free social media scheduler, another good one to look at. You can connect it right with your Instagram, Facebook, whatever it might be. We use Datadog's own Instagram channel. So that's another kind of conversation, is the conversation of, do you have separate employer brand social media channels versus internal social media channels? I mentioned HubSpot. HubSpot Life was my baby when I first started. I started those social media channels as a way to kind of separate that employer brand content from some more of that product or marketing content. And we ran Instagram takeovers, and I was just like, here's the login, go run with it. And it worked. We had great people, and we always had this, I think, this rule of like, use good judgment. It's something that HubSpot lived and breathed on, still do to this day. And it's something that I really think employees are so proud to just, again, share their story, amplify their own voices, build their personal brands as a way to build our employer brand, that doing those Instagram takeovers to really show a day in their life gave them those reins. Now that I'm at a company, though, that has grown, and when I was at HubSpot, we weren't quite at that size and scale as I am now at Datadog. And so having a little bit, I think, of those barriers in mind of like, hey, instead of just giving you the reins to our entire, company-wide Instagram page, let's give a Google Doc that we can have them share this fantastic story. Our interns really got to just like, they did this amazing video reel, like things that like are just, I just was like, they're so creative. And it was one of the most viewed stories on our Instagram story itself. People loved hearing their successes. We ended up winning one of the intern awards. So we got to shout that from the rooftops. And it was just such a great way to really capitalize on their actual voice, their perspective, not even just through like a graphic, but like listening to them through an Instagram takeover. They submitted like a story video reel so we could share it on the story that way too. So it was just a creative, different kind of approach to making sure that we're amplifying the voices, even of our interns who we know can and will ultimately and hopefully eventually turn into full-time employees at Datadog, whose internal mobility story we can kind of continue to share down the line. So it was really, really just cool to see that story brought to life.
I love it that you gave the interns the choice to apply for this and just to be on the face of Instagram. Just a curious question. How is your engagement on Instagram? How many followers do you have? So, because you said that it was the most viewed on Instagram, and I'm just
Absolutely.
curious how your Instagram account at Datadog is doing.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm not just biased because my team owns our Instagram, which I love. The company sees it as a little bit more of a candidate as well as customer facing content tool. So it's something that we try and tiptoe the line, be very cognizant of. But I'm very proud to say, since I started, when I started at Datadog, we had right about 1,500 followers. So Instagram was not our social media channel of choice. We very much relied more so on Facebook and Twitter from a product perspective to really grow the company, the business, especially as we had just IPO'd at that point when I joined in. And so my team really took over the Instagram as a creative, fun outlet to really engage with those employee stories, because at the same time, customers too, they want to know, like, what do employees think about your workplace? They want to work with a workplace that is a best place to work, that has employees who are proud to talk about the company. And so customers started seeing that content too. And I am so proud to say we are now on track for, I think we're almost at 7,000 followers I've been here about a year and 8 months now. So seeing that massive growth. We saw an 120% uptick in followers in the first year since we kind of started taking over this Instagram strategy. And we're on track. Our growth goal, I call them vanity metrics. We can definitely talk a little bit about metrics because I know that's a big gray area in the recruitment marketing world, also employer brand world. But vanity metrics, those engagement metrics, right? The likes, the followers, the shares, the comments. So those are what I call vanity metrics. And they're a little bit just like that engagement style. So looking at the followers, how many people are actually following our page and how is that growth number going? And are people resonating with your content? It's a great way to recognize, are people watching? Are people viewing that intern video, for example? It was a way for us to recognize, like, wow, these Instagram takeovers are working. Like, people like seeing, first of all, video content. I think video is like
huge.
Queen. Yeah. It's huge right now. Like, people are really capitalizing on video content. And you don't always have to, I'll just talk about the video content for a quick second because it's a passion project of mine. You don't always have to rely on like really robust, well put together videos. All right, go to Datadog's LinkedIn, go to my LinkedIn. I do a monthly talk show literally using iMovie that I call Pup Corner. And it's just a once a month day in the life, 3-minute video where I interview an employee at Datadog and talk to them about like, what has your growth journey been? What does a day in your life look like? And just talk to them a little bit about that day-to-day component. We used to do it as a Facebook Live when I was at HubSpot. So it's just like a really simple, easy way to tap into an employee and get that, again, visual component, that voice amplified from them. But the video content has really been, I think, what has grown our social media channels. It's what grew our HubSpot social media channels. HubSpot, I can't believe, like, HubSpot Life, when I started it, obviously 0 followers. I was employee number 1 to kind of set them up. They now have for 25,000 followers just from the content, and their content team on the employer brand side of the house. I got to give my old boss, Hannah Fleischman, so many shout outs. They just like crush it on the content side. And it's something that we continue to use as inspo. So like use that inspiration from all the other employer brand social media channels out there to help, decide like what's the content that you feel resonates the most with you and also with other candidates and other audiences, because it tells so much of that great story of like, what can we be doing better, differently than those around us, and really set that example of, that growth journey and growth story of your own employer brand and recruitment marketing strategies.
Yeah, and I think as we've all gone to shown how amazing video content is, and also it doesn't have to be so pimped out, right? It can just be like very authentic and just natural, because I mean, we've seen during the pandemic how important it is to be human. And sometimes some companies might not have the resources to just have the big budgets to make a super clear cut video. So having something authentic and raw is actually more human than the polished, right? So it shows a little
100%.
bit more of the company's soul, right? You can see it,
Absolutely.
you can really see it through. So I'm also really excited for the next question that we have. And it's, so we've talked a little about the tools that you give them, such as Canva, but what are some other tools that you give your employees to get really excited about amplifying their voices?
Yeah, I would say, so one of my favorite things that we did, and I quickly mentioned this, but setting up some type of internal space that your employees can capitalize on this content, the quick copy that, so all that quick copy that I mentioned, we actually have quick copy docs. So documents right within Google Docs that we've created that we house all of this quick copy. And those quick copy docs, we separate them by department. So I have one for every single department, our, enterprise sales, commercial sales, engineering, product, recruiting, or people team has its own. And those documents, we keep track of all this amazing content that we're creating so that our employees, our recruiters, whoever, our hiring managers can go into these documents, pull a quick piece of content and put it out on LinkedIn, because that content that we're hopefully creating is evergreen. It's something that we do keep a tab on. There are employees who are inevitably going to move on from your company. So we try and keep tabs on, if there's someone who we have featured in the past who may no longer be with us, making sure that we're really just parsing out that content. But having, I think, a record and a place that you can send employees to, keep saying candidates, send employees to as a means for them to just get that quick piece of copy. And then, as I quickly mentioned, Slack. So we use Slack as an internal, just software for communication. Whatever you use, if you have the ability to set up like a channel or a team or something, we kind of coined Datadog Life as our employer brand theme, name, content, whatever you want to call it. It's our culture. It's Datadog Life. It's kind of like our hashtag. HubSpot Life was, kind of where the idea came from, where we had kind of coined that when I was there. And so it's just this idea of like, this is the place and space for our employees to be sharing those stories. And I saw a question about kind of like how you built, or if we started with employer brand as a way to kind of build this recruitment marketing strategy. Yes, absolutely. And Datadog Life was that employer brand, is that employer brand. Because at the end of the day, so much of your employer brand is based on the stories that your people are sharing. And it takes a little bit of momentum for them to really be organically starting to share their own stories. So giving them the tools such as those quick copy docs, having a Slack channel. So we have the Datadog Life Slack channel, and the way that it operates is anytime we have that quick copy, anytime that someone posts their own LinkedIn post that talks about like a career anniversary or a lesson that they learned, we encourage them to share it within this community. And that's exactly what it is. It's a community of our employees. We now have over 650 people within that Slack channel, just sharing content, sharing ideas, sharing what they love about our brand, about our culture, whatever it is. And it really just creates this safe space that they can be building, again, their personal brands through either the content that we're creating or sharing that personal brand content that they're creating, so that we can help amplify and encourage and promote it from whether it be our own social media channels, from a community, Datadog, LinkedIn engagement perspective, whatever it is. So I would say quick copy docs, quick, easy, scrappy way to just have some of that continuous evergreen content. Some type of internal communication tool, whether it be Slack or, any type of those like internal kind of channels that you might use. Another great way to do it. And then also, if you think about, so one of the things that I wanted to bring to life was the idea of giving or encouraging or teaching employees how to be building their own personal brand. So we've talked about this quite a lot, but an employee's personal brand, essentially, in my opinion, is what's building your employer brand, right? Other than what you're putting forward as your culture, as your community, the personal brand stories that they're telling about their career, about that career mobility, about the successes, the wins, the failures, whatever it might be. Those are the stories that are helping to support your employer brand. But so often, and I think especially in this last year, LinkedIn has been really flooded by a lot of the we're hiring, everyone's hiring, we're all hiring, right? That's why we're here learning about employer brand and recruitment marketing, because we're all hiring. So what I try and promote and encourage my team to do, I run a personal brand workshop. Something that I learned just through my own, research background, LinkedIn, I won't even call it expertise, but just, navigation around the platform and system itself, is just teaching people how to be promoting their stories in a way that tells the why. So this is part of what I talk about in this workshop is like, why would someone want to connect with you on LinkedIn? Why do they want to learn more about you or your company or your workplace? What's that why? And so a lot of times it's not that we're hiring, because we're all hiring. It's the, those stories, those personal brand stories of the career mobility, the lessons learned, that really amazing product that they worked on, that great customer that they just helped solve a problem for. Those are the everyday stories that your employees are going to live and breathe in, because that's going to be a day in their life. So if we can encourage them to be sharing those stories, that authenticity, and it also creates so much more engagement across LinkedIn. And I'm sure you've seen it even within your own content that you're posting across your social channels. That personal brand content gets so much more engagement. Those vanity metrics that we talked about, right? You get so many more reactions. And I also tell people within the personal brand workshops, it's not just how you're putting yourself out there in terms of the content that you're writing and posting. It's also how are you engaging back with your community, especially as employer brand recruitment marketing professionals. One of the things I really try and do is engage back with all of the people who are now using hashtag Datadog Life in their own posts. They're organically starting to do it. So this little ball momentum has snowball affected, domino effect into people starting to share that organic content. And so as they're sharing content, I try and engage back with them. So leaving a comment, one of the things I tell people, if you don't have time to write an entire LinkedIn post itself to kind of be building your network, build that personal brand, build that employer brand, comment on someone else's, because essentially LinkedIn is a space where you're having a conversation with your network, with your community, you're knowledge sharing, you're teaching people something about the company, about the workplace, whatever the culture, whatever it might be. So if you comment back to someone else's status or post, as maybe it's an anniversary post and you're just like, congratulations for being here, Daniella. Like, we're so excited that you've been and contributed so much in these 2 years. People are going to see that and recognize that positive feedback, that affirmation from your company, from you, from whoever it is. It also gives you exposure to a network of people that you haven't had exposure to yet, right? Because all of the people in this person's network are all of a sudden seeing you and your profile and the amazing personal brand that you're trying to build through that comment and through that engagement. So little tidbit more around personal brand than anything, but honestly, it all contributes to that employer brand and the recruitment marketing strategy you're building by that authentic voice that you're trying to build with your network of connections. So personal brand workshops, quick copy docs, having a Slack channel, just all the tools and resources that you can be giving to your employees to help them amplify and empower them to be amplifying. Within that personal brand workshop, I go through kind of like 30 minutes of the how to beef up your LinkedIn profile, little things like adding a LinkedIn banner. So many people still have like the blue LinkedIn, banner, which there's no problem with that. But if you have, Canva is a great place. Create a really quick LinkedIn banner that you can be giving to employees. It's a quick, easy way to be building that employer brand. And then the second half of the workshop, I give them best practices for actually writing what I call a personal brand post. So not that we're hiring post, but more of the why post, the why Datadog, why the company, why the culture, what about your career path? And then they give them 30 minutes. And I'm like, hey, go write this, go take this time, make it interactive, write your post. And then if you want, feedback, edits, comments, I'm here for those 30 minutes for them to actually utilize me so that I can help them and encourage them to at least give them the tools to post that first time. And then hopefully they continue to do so. And it's all about cadence too, right? I tell them, add 10 minutes to your calendar once a week, once a month, if that's all you can do. But just making sure that you're posting on a consistent basis from a personal brand perspective helps to ensure that your network is seeing that content and engaging back with it. And I know that was a lot. I love this topic, if you can't tell. So I have lots to talk about.
I've had actually a few questions pop up, and it seems the way that you talk about Datadog, that your employees are so engaged. And I'm just curious, what is the culture like at Datadog? Because you have so many people already just like super active to promote these stories. How do you basically hustle the troops and get them to this point where they have this fire that they're like, yes, I want to sign up for the spotlight, I want to be nominated? How do you kind of create this snowball from a culture perspective? I'd be really curious to hear that.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's something that has been a slow burn in the last almost 2 years that I've been here. It wasn't something that employees organically did when I first joined. We very much have prided ourselves on having a really organic, phenomenal culture that's built on our people. We are people driven. We are people first. We really are dedicated to supporting and creating a culture that our people can really thrive and succeed and grow in based on learning and develop. We have a really incredible talent development team. So that's what our culture has always been rooted in. And recognizing that, having come from a company that culture was the topic of conversation, it was such a different world to kind of enter into. Whereas I came from HubSpot, where they have a culture deck, they have a culture code. I had the employer brand written out, spelled out for me, that I was able to shout from the rooftops and talk about all this phenomenal, just the ERGs, the DEI support, everything that they were kind of building. Whereas on the flip side, now we're on this journey of really establishing that culture, establishing that EVP, having a little bit, we've taken a little bit of time to get there, just as a company that wanted to fly a little bit more under the radar and just be creating this natural organic culture. And so that was why it was actually pertinent for us to lean on the people as a way to tell that culture story, because we didn't have a culture deck to lean on, right? We didn't have that story already set in place. So it was really utilizing our people and having them share how do they see the culture? What is their perspective? How would they define that employee value proposition, or like those company values that we're working on establishing? Like really pulling and utilizing your team to ensure that they're sharing what their passions are and what they're passionate about, I think was how we kind of leaned on this organic culture that was already built as a way for them to amplify it, because it was all based around them and the people and the product and telling those stories of the really phenomenal work that they're doing. We believe in work excellence and just really putting our best foot forward in the work and the innovation that we're doing. We move fast, but we also rely on a lot of data and metrics to get us there. And I think that telling the stories through that lens and giving them the reins to do it is really what was able to organically kind of grow our employer brand. And now we're putting in the puzzle pieces to make sure that we can continue kind of supporting that with, we just launched our own internal ERGs. We have, an incredible employee engagement team that's getting formed. So now we have this more robust culture that's being established, that's been based on this people-driven culture, which has been really, really cool to watch in this last 2 years kind of adapt and come into fruition.
Yeah, and you've mentioned a lot that it was kind of a slow burn, but
Mhm.
it was also people oriented. And I'm super
Absolutely.
curious to understand how you've noticed the changes within your recruitment marketing strategy when it comes to engaging with not just active candidates, but with passive candidates. How have you noticed that within the last 2 years of actually attracting candidates that didn't even know that they wanted to work at Datadog, but were just like, wow, seeing the employee stories are like, you know what, maybe I'm actually more curious about exploring an opportunity there.
Yeah, it's a lot of recruiter in-mail messages back to me. So our recruiters, which I love, I tell my recruiters, so kind of even touching on the metric side of things, sometimes the data, especially from passive candidates, the only data you can really collect is that qualitative metric. So what are people saying about your brand, right? How is the talent resonating back with you? And rely on your recruiters as the people who are also championing this content you're creating. So you don't want to just be creating this content that's going into this black void, right? That no one's using, no one's utilizing, or maybe you share out once and it has this quick shelf life and then it disappears. If you can really be actioning on your recruiters to share out and continue to share out that content, especially in LinkedIn in-mails, whatever it might be, to that audience, to that passive talent, and hear from especially the passive talent, how are they resonating with this content, but also just putting your name on the map. I think it's, Datadog for such a long time, it's something we still struggle with. I'm sure all of us struggle in markets that are harder to reach. For us, the DACH region is one that we're newer in. We just established our office in Amsterdam last year. So perfect example of like a place and space that we're just starting on our growth journey there. Same thing in Singapore and Japan. I know we have someone on the call from Singapore. So like we're just kind of starting the Datadog process and establishing that employer brand there. And I think that using the stories and the qualitative information that's coming back from your recruiters from this passive talent is a great way to do that. We also do a lot. I've run all of our demand generation, so LinkedIn advertising, going a little bit more into companies that do have a little bit of budget to play with, but utilizing LinkedIn as a way to attract some of that passive, really quality talent. So the other thing that my team actively pursues and looks at, it's not just the volume of inbound applicants you can get in the door, right? So as a ways to measure our recruitment marketing strategy, we look at how does that inbound applicant volume fluctuate over time. This year obviously has been a little bit tumultuous with more passive candidates than I think ever, as people kind of like settle and sit with all of that's kind of been happening in the world. But we're also looking at candidate quality. So for us, we define that as how many people are moving from that application review into a recruiter phone interview or into a face-to-face interview of some kind. And then ultimately, how many of those applicants are also moving into the final hire. But knowing that we don't impact, my team doesn't impact as much of that middle of the funnel, the candidate experience. That's why we have a phenomenal employee experience team to kind of help kind of create some of that. So how are we actually getting people into there? And these LinkedIn advertising campaigns, even if you only have a little bit of budget to test it, try it. You can do like a one-off ad. Indeed is another area. I know Kanunu is big in the region over there. So testing out like 1 or 2 sponsored content, because what's great with the sponsored content, if you do have that budget, you can tap into that passive talent because you can really target the talent that you're going after. That's the one, I think, caveat of having more of a free or just a strategy that's more based on your people or the the networks that you've kind of already been tapping into. You don't have as much, I think, say over who that talent or who that content is reaching. But utilizing a little bit of budget, utilizing LinkedIn. I like the pipeline builder specifically. If anyone's tapped into the LinkedIn, just like more on the recruitment marketing side of the house, but from a paid campaign component, pipeline builders just build these really easy pipelines for your recruiters of warm lead talent that they can be pipelining from. So bringing in some of that passive talent that's also a little more adverse to friction. So the friction of the application process, especially at the enterprise sales level for us. So looking, or software engineers who, they're just coding, working all day, selling, talking to customers. They don't have time to fill out an application. So I think it's putting that content in the right places, in front of the right people, and then listening to that qualitative feedback from your recruiters to hear from them. I love getting messages of like, this person just reached out about seeing the Datadog brand. They hadn't seen it like ever until this last year. Like, this is, huge win for your team, blah, 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 whatever it is. Snapshot those. I take screenshots of every single piece of those qualitative data and host it in a folder of like, when we don't have the answers in data and metrics and quantitative data, that's where we rely back on, especially from that passive talent perspective.
And as we're already tapping into the metrics, and we've talked a little bit about qualitative data, what can you dive into a little bit of quantitative data? We only have a couple of minutes left, so I think some of our audience had already pre-asked this question to me before, so I think it would be really useful to kind of tie it all together. How do you measure success?
I would love actually to use one of our polls, Danielle, because I'm also so curious to all of you. I threw it in there, but I'm so curious what you all measure, because I know this is such a, I think, widely talked about area within recruitment marketing, because there's not always an easy line or dotted line into, what that exact piece of content is that got that candidate in the door. Or maybe they use multiple touch points as a way to, maybe they see a video and attend one of your events and go to your careers page. And so what comes in, we use a Greenhouse as our applicant tracking system. So within Greenhouse, we get that one source. That's all you get is one source, but that there's so many other avenues that these people are utilizing to come in and discover or apply to your company. So I'm so curious what you're using as your metrics. If you use something else that isn't on that list. So for us, some of our big ones, applicant volume. So what I talked about, inbound applicants kind of coming in on a regular cadence. I measure that weekly just to see that influx and inflow across different departments. Candidate quality. So again, going back to one of my things that I'm really passionate about is not just creating noise for our recruiters, but making sure that we're really driving in candidates who have, who we think is a great fit for Datadog and who they think Datadog is a great fit for them. And then those engagement metrics, what I call vanity metrics, another great way. mix of everything. You should see my spreadsheet. I have a million different metrics. There's also, I think, a million different avenues. LinkedIn Recruiter has some great metrics. If you do have a LinkedIn Recruiter license, they just released this new engagement metric. So you can actually see how candidates have been engaging with your brand over time. Is a great way to, at that very tippity top of the funnel, when your company really just cares about that bottom funnel metric, the lead or the ultimate hire, you can be like, yeah, that's great, but look at how we're impacting from an engagement perspective. I'm going to stop there and go into some of these responses. I know, but it's such something that I'm so passionate and curious about, because there's so many things that can be, I think, shared around metrics, a mix of everything. I feel like most of us really track that mix of everything. A lot of engagement metrics. Yep. Big on engagement metrics, mix of everything. I don't yet track metrics are kind of 3 right across the board, 29%. I would encourage you all to explore applicant volume and candidate quality. I would say those are 2 that, especially from like telling that holistic picture, or kind of how your recruiters, or, your, whoever it is, your CPO, your CHRO, that's what they really care about, right? They care about that ultimate lead, that ultimate conversion. And so I think that really taking from, all the things you're doing, that robust strategy, and being like, here's that influx of applicants or candidate quality, and how you've really been able to move the needle on, again, the passive talent, that active talent that's kind of coming into your pipeline. It's a quick conversion metric. I literally just take, from a candidate quality perspective, I take the volume of applicants versus, so anyone who lands an application review within Greenhouse, that's how it's defined. And then anyone who lands in a recruiter phone interview. So that's what I consider from an applicant to a candidate. Once they get that face-to-face interaction or that phone interaction with someone, they become a qualified candidate. And whatever that percentage is, we tend to fall, just from a metrics perspective, right around, and it fluctuates across every department, but 20% from a candidate quality perspective is what I really try and keep in mind. Some teams, our commercial sales team, we have newer, greener sales development reps kind of joining the team. We see almost a 50% candidate quality conversion, which is phenomenal, like absolutely phenomenal. That team is a powerhouse team. On the flip side, general and administrative, we get so many applicants. We get such a high volume of applicants, but we don't have as many roles to fill. So we see more of a 15% candidate quality conversion there. So it's just good to keep in mind of, it's going to fluctuate, but as long as you can have a benchmark for yourself to stay consistent too, it just helps to prove that this content that you're creating, it's not just driving applications, but it's driving people, or your content is resonating with the right people, and you're building a brand, or building that engagement and empowering your employees to be building brands within their own networks. Also looking at your referral, how your referrals kind of fluctuate, because that, especially with employee amplification, shows how your employees are engaging with their own networks to boost some of that referral, or, just making sure that you're encouraging your employees to be sharing the fact that once they share that post, a quick link to the career site, whatever it might be, to encourage those people within their networks to also be applying.
Yeah. Wow, great. So we've gone a little bit over. That was a great amount of information. I really think it's so important to track all of these metrics, because then you can find out where the bottlenecks are. Where do you need to focus a little bit more of your efforts on, and where can you kind of continuously let the ball rolling? So I do have one quick question. Maybe you have some resources or some tools that you could just already tell our audience, as just to wrap it up, like some tools that they can use to already get started with employer branding to just help automate their process.
Yeah. Automation. It's the trickiest thing. I would say you're going to be working on a million projects at a given time. That is like what I tell people the most, is utilize some type of project management tool if you're not already. Free ones, Trello, Asana, just easy ones that you can keep track of the projects that you're working on. So like pulling it back from the actual, the content you'll be creating. Take care of you. Put on your oxygen masks first. That's what I tell my team, is like, make sure that, you have your projects in line and in order, and because that's part of our job, right? We're working on 10 to 15 given projects at a given time. And so like making sure that you put that oxygen mask on first, what it is that you need to prioritize, that you need to work on. Another free tool that's great. I mentioned Canva. I love Canva. Another one that we're utilizing, Google Forms as being an easy one, Slack. From an engagement or a learning perspective, there's a great podcast called the Employer Brand Podcast. I get a lot of my ideas and resources. I'm big into knowledge sharing Also connect with me on LinkedIn. Knowledge share with each other. I'm a huge advocate and fan of having a quick conversation with one another. Utilize ourselves as our resources and tools to be encouraging the conversation and learning, what are some things that someone else is doing that others aren't yet doing. So advocate for each other, connect with each other. I use a lot of, again, employer brand podcast. LinkedIn has a lot of great articles. Even within Canva, they have some video testimonials or tutorials. So if you're brand new to Canva, watch them. They'll give you a great, quick 5-minute, you've never done graphic design of anything before, kind of like me. Also, data and metrics. I used to joke before coming to Datadog that I was allergic to data. And so looking at a tutorial on Google Analytics, it's something I still am not comfortable in, but it's something that really does help track, I think, those leads and metrics. And utilizing the data that's already at your fingertips. Your applicant tracking system has great reports that you can be pulling from. LinkedIn Recruiter, if you do use LinkedIn Recruiter and have that paid component of it. We didn't even get to talk about Glassdoor, but obviously Glassdoor is one of the biggest employee testimonial platforms that exist in the world. One thing that I recently, and you can do it for free, reply back to the and to the feedback being left for you. No one wants feedback to go down a black hole. And I think that that's one of the things I've really tried to encourage is how can we get more employees to be giving us that feedback? And it's never encouraging positive reviews. That's not ever what we want to do, but we just want to encourage people to be sharing their perspective and make sure that we're responding back to them and letting them know that we see them, we hear them, and we value their feedback. And that has really helped us improve our Glassdoor score. So I have a whole article on it on LinkedIn. I would definitely love to chat more about Glassdoor because I know we didn't get to it and we're way over time because I love this stuff. So I will shush now, but please connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to knowledge share with so many of you.
We might have to do another one of these. So yeah, everyone, thank you so much for coming. This was such a fruitful and interesting conversation. I do feel like it's not over and that we definitely have so much more to talk about and that there could be a part 2 in 2022. So everyone stay tuned. Thank you all so much for joining. We're going to tune out now wherever you are in the world. Either have a great evening or have a great day and connect with, I've connected with some of you already on LinkedIn, but please reach out to Riley. She's super responsive, as you can see, super excited about this topic. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your day, nights, evenings, wherever you are in the world. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.